Hello everyone, we are back with another design video. I submitted the design that I created, or designs that I created last time, and they're really kind of just sketch ideas, nothing really complete, just some different tryings of some ideas that I had. But I heard back on what my friend liked and didn't like in some different direction. So I'm going to incorporate some of that into this new design. So hopefully this will be a little bit closer to an actual usable design. I think I have a good direction to head in. One of the specific pieces of feedback that she gave me was that she wanted to use she wanted to see the entire cardinal, not just the head of the cardinal. So just like I did before in the first one, I'm going to start with a really rough sketch. This time I sketched this out on my iPad and then did a screen capture of it just so I can get kind of a free flowing hand-drawn shape to start with. I like to do that. So we're going to start with the middle initial is J. So that's going to be kind of the anchor point of this design. So let me shrink it down here and make it usable. So like I said, I was playing around with this on my iPad, sketching it out, and that helped me quickly play around with some different concepts. And I use the word play. I don't like to use the word play when it comes to design. I think it's kind of a natural word, but it gives the feeling that designers just play around, and that's not what we do. But it's kind of hard to think of another word that doesn't sound super pretentious, like ideation or something like that. It's just a little bit too stuck up. So I use the word play around, but what I mean is explore ideas visually. So now I'm going to just trace the outline of this, convert it into a digital outline so I can get rid of the sketch, so I don't need it anymore. As you can tell, I'm still learning a little bit about this program. The more I do this, the more natural it comes. When I first started, I was making 6 or 7 guesses as to what I needed to do. Now I can get it down in like 1 or 2. So I'm trying to find a way to break this so it becomes a corner and not a rounded. There we go. I did it. A lot of it has to do with the keyboard commands are just a little bit different in this program than they are in Illustrator. So I'm oftentimes hitting the wrong key. But we'll get there. That's part of learning. So I'm trying to make this shape as fluid and organic as I can, kind of smoothing out some of the roughness of my hand sketch, but still keeping the spontaneity of it, if that makes any sense. So basically, it's freeform, but it doesn't look like it was drawn by someone who is shivering in the cold. So that looks pretty good. So get rid of the sketch in the background. Now we have just a smooth line that we can start to work with. And as I refine this, a lot of a design is working with proportion. You can get some of the macro relationships down and shapes and sizes and stuff. But to really make a design pop or kind of hold together as a complete unit, A lot of that has to do with some of the very subtle adjustments of proportions of the curves, how quickly they fall off, how gently they roll into one another, but then also the proportions of scale with height versus width. Now I'm working with the color. I think I decided to just go ahead and make this as bright a red as I could so that it really jumps out of the page. And so now we're going to start to convert this J into something that should be familiar if you saw my last video. So we're going to turn this yellow and we're going to tuck it here underneath this other shape. And we have the beginnings of our cardinal. And I liked this way of doing it because, as you'll see as I go on, the cardinal is looking up and kind of looking out as well. Kind of like it's looking to the future. It's not down, pecking on the ground or something like that. It could be singing, it could be getting ready to sing. There's a lot of very positive aspects that I like about this posture. So we're going to tuck it underneath as well. And we have a pretty good proportion of the black to the yellow and the red. And a lot of this is based on the work that I did in the last video with creating the cardinal's head. I kind of played around a lot with what made that work as a cardinal. So I'm just doing some fine tuning, working with this. I like using that black kind of kite shape. You really don't need to put an eyeball on it. Kind of that corner of the black takes care of that. So now I'm saving my work, also very important to do. I learned my lesson pretty early on in my career, to save early and to save often. And there are still a few times it will come around to bite me, but for the most part, I think I do that pretty well. Now watch me mess that up next week. So again, we are working with some proportions. I want to make sure that this looks like a cardinal, but also that it reads as the letter J. So I think that I need to make some slight adjustments. The hook of the J down at the bottom is not quite strong enough. So I'm playing around with what part of this bottom half. So I want to have a little bit of the swelling of the breast of the bird as it comes down to what would be the wings and the feet and stuff like that. But I don't want it to be too much because then it stops looking like the letter J and more like a sock or something like that. So given the fact that we are kind of on the second version of this logo, we're going to start seeing a lot more just small refinements of the idea. So moving handles back and forth, do that a lot. That's kind of the way in which you can see in real time how these proportions work with each other. So I thought I'd give you guys a little bit of an update while I'm messing around with this shape on my classes. This will be my third semester that it's wrapping up now. I have 2 more papers to write. One is a really big one. But I'm enjoying the class and I'm enjoying the papers that I've written. But I will definitely be glad when it's over. I'll have a break over Christmas, and then I'll have 2 more classes that I take in the spring. So one is a creative art conference that I'm going to be attending in March, and then writing a paper and doing some artwork in association with that class. So I'm really looking forward to that. But I've learned a lot this semester in the classes that I've taken on the Reformation and the Renaissance, as well as world religions. We are now on the last of the 4 religions we're studying, which is Taoism. So I have yet to crack the book open. We just started the last section, so I don't know much about it yet, but I will in the next few weeks. I'll at least know a little bit about it. So now we have the beak, and we have the hopeful-looking cardinal staring off into the distance. And we have a fairly nice-looking letter J. I know that I'm probably going to mess around with this a little bit more, but for now, let's put the other initials in and start seeing about some proportions of how these letters are going to work with each other. I already kind of have a good idea of what kind of font that I want based on the research I did in the last video, and also kind of what fonts I think will work with this letter J. You don't want them to be too vastly different, but at the same time, you don't want it all to look hand-drawn. So I'm going to need some fonts that are very stable, very clean, that can counterbalance this more hand-drawn letter J. So I know that it's going to be a serif font. I'd like it to have some pretty strong contrast between one stroke and the other. You can see there on that V, one of those strokes is really thick and the other one's really thin. So I like that. I think it adds a little bit of classiness to it, a little bit of a high-end, high-scale look. So I'm going to scroll through here, kind of from my memory, and then also looking at the examples of the fonts. I'm going to scroll through these and eventually settle on one. But with my schooling, I will have next semester, and then I will almost be done. I will have 2 very small 1-credit classes to take in the fall, and then I will have my capstone thesis project to do. I'll be gearing up for that about this time next year. And then hopefully I will have my master's degree. So it's been really good to kind of get my brain back into this type of thinking, specifically taking notes and writing and doing research for academic reasons. You don't really have a lot of reason to do that in real life, but there's really no other way to get detailed knowledge into your head and do analysis. You've got to take the time to read it, process it, understand it, digest it, and then synthesize it and analyze it. So kind of like what you do with design sometimes. You take an idea and you explore it, you embellish it, you enhance it, you modify it. You're influenced by other designs that you see, and you don't just directly copy them, but you process them and filter them through your own viewpoint and what would best suit your client's needs, basically. So we're dialing our letters in here. Now we're going to start trying to see about proportions. I'm not completely happy with how these are working with the J right now. So I've got to start working on a balance. Because right now the J is really taking over everything. So I'm going to try a few things. Going back to my box idea, although my friend said that she really didn't like the boxes because they were confining and constricting, and she wanted something that was a little bit free and open. But I'm at least going to try it. It's not going to last for long. I think it almost negates the free-form flowing of the J, kind of decapitates it there. Its head just kind of sticks up at the top, so it's not all that great. I was trying to use it to unify the piece, but it's not really doing that. So I think what I'm thinking here is trying to make that J look more like a J. I think that's why it's fighting the V and the S, because it's really not looking like a letter right now. It needs to be messed around with a little bit more. So try to make it longer, and it just looks too skinny. We'll get there eventually. See, it's all about proportions. I drug those bottom handles. I didn't like the way that changed the shape, so then I moved up and changed the whole bottom half of it in relationship to the top half. And it really needs more of a hook. Something like that. Now it's starting to actually say, this is the letter J. But that throws off the other proportions, so we've got to start to mess around with them. Now it's starting to look like a letter J that you may have seen in another font somewhere. Well, I hope your all's fall heading into winter is doing well. If you're in America, I hope you had a good Thanksgiving. Or if you're not in America and you celebrated Thanksgiving anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. My son in England had a Thanksgiving dinner for his friends. They had a large number of people show up and a very large amount of food. So they were definitely doing Thanksgiving right over in England. I had a fairly small Thanksgiving with my mom and dad. We just ate some sandwiches and played some games all day, and it was lovely. We didn't have a tremendous amount of food, so we weren't all stuck in food comas, which was nice. Okay, so I'm still working, really starting to refine this. I'm starting to like the way this is looking now. And I'm still trying to strike that balance between the breast of the bird and the side of the letter J, and see what some of these other proportions look like. That actually stops looking like a cardinal. It's very interesting what some very subtle changes will do to a shape like this. Because it needs to be easily recognizable as a cardinal and as the letter J. It has to hold its own with the other letters for balance of shape and the easiness in which it is comprehended and understood. So I think we're really getting there. That swoop of that bottom of that hook of the J is starting to really play nicely, all the way from the top of the head all the way down to the tail. Now I'm playing around with trying to get some colors loaded in my palette. trying a darker red, see if that works. I think it's a little too somber. Trying to strike a balance here between just the ridiculously bright red and the more somber burgundy, but I think I went with the bright red anyway. So let's see what it all looks like when it's red. I think that's a bit much. I think it focuses you too much on just the head, because that's the black spot, so your eye always goes to the greatest place of contrast. And I want that to be kind of the beak. I want that to be the first place your eye lights, and then your eye will travel down the J into the rest of the piece. So now I'm working with how the curve of the breast of the bird interacts with the curve at the top of the S. I don't want those curves to be fighting. They need to be in a good, harmonious, swooping proportion to each other. And I like the overlapping of the V. I think it starts to give the piece some depth. It's no longer just sitting flat on the paper. The cardinal and the V are actually interacting with each other. And I think what we need is just a little hint of a wing that will continue to carry the theme of the bird all the way down the letter J without compromising the actual shape of the letter. And it won't take much, just a little bit of a crescent shape to draw here. Hide some of the other letters that are getting in the way. I'm learning the keyboard shortcuts much more quickly now. Just kind of like a fingernail sliver is all you need. Convert that. Bring back my letters. And now black is too strong. It's pulling your eye away from everything else. So we're going to save my work. I think that's what I'm doing now. It's just saving it. And I'm going to reference something. I'm going to take the word timber. I want to make sure that I remembered how I treated that. We're going to put it in here just to see how it looks. Oops, not there. Get the right tool. In our last video, I talked a lot about Adobe. Not always in a positive manner either. I updated my Adobe software at work to the latest version. And I have to say there's quite a few little unexpected bugs in it. It's just really surprising. They've added some pop-up windows that I'm having a difficult time making go away. Like when you close a document in Photoshop, it brings up this window. It's kind of like trying to help you, but I don't need that help. I can use the keyboard shortcut to get where I need to go, but I haven't figured out a way to turn it off yet. So, some annoying things like that. But maybe I'm just getting old and cranky, not liking change. But when something like that, because it's a big box, it takes up about a quarter of the screen. And so I'm trying to move and click to something behind it. And just as I'm getting ready to click and move on, this big box pops up and gets in my way, slows me down. Don't like that. Okay, so we're going to change the swoop here on this wing just enough to make it visible. Almost like it looks like a shadow on the side of the bird. And that way it's not competing with the word timber either. And I do like you can hover over these numbers in the dialog boxes and the panels. And you can just scroll your mouse wheel and change the value of the number. It's a little finicky sometimes, but I like the immediacy of it. That I can kind of see the sizes and proportions change. So now we're fine-tuning. It's often difficult to line up something with the edge of a rounded character like an S. So you usually want to cheat it in a little bit so the S is just a little bit over. If you make them line up with each other exactly, it looks like the S is kind of shrinking backwards. So, pretty happy with this. I think it's going to work, at least for a new version, to send to my friend, see what she thinks, and we can move on from there. But I truly feel like this is a logo. It holds together. It is a unified shape and idea and concept. The others that we did with the last video were just kind of beginning to explore what we wanted to do. So, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed seeing this process of pulling together this concept. We'll see what the feedback is on this, and that may determine what we do on our next video. So, still making some minor adjustments, trying to find a proportion that cardinal doesn't take over too much, isn't too dominant. So I'm going to group this swoop with the rest of the bird so it all goes together as one shape. But I do enjoy doing these videos for you guys. Got really good positive feedback on the last one. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So I may make this a more regular series if I can find little one-off logos. I probably do maybe 2 or 3 like this a year that aren't part of my regular client work, but are just logos for friends and people that I know. So I think I'm going to... So we're coming down to the end of this. I'm kind of just sitting back, looking at it, seeing what I think. Yep, I'm going to change that. Didn't like it. Oftentimes you try something out and then you just discard it immediately. Actually going back in my history to find an older version, kind of reviewing the steps that I took. Still looking at it, not doing much, it's almost done. So now I'm going to make a copy. That means I'm going to be doing some radical changes that I can just trash this whole thing if I don't like it, and I don't have to try to undo everything. So making that J shorter, comparing it to the taller bird, it's a little bit more compact. It doesn't stand up as tall above the letters as the other one. So I don't want it to be hiding behind the S. I want it to be clearly coming out over top of it. But I think those proportions are nice. I honestly can't remember which one I chose, so I think we're going to stay with this one because we're just about done with the video. So thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to my channel. Let me know what you think about these type of videos. And I will see you in my next one. I think I have a munch pack coming up to unbox for you guys. Alrighty. Bye.